Welcome to Time-Saving Research Tips for the Werth College of Science, Technology, and Mathematics. This session will be recorded and made available on Forsyth Library's YouTube channel for your reference at a later time. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to introduce yourself by name and major or department in our chat feature. With that being said, I'd like to introduce our expert speakers today. First is Cindy Landis, our Instruction and Outreach Librarian, and also Elizabeth Downing Turner, and she is our Digital Curation Librarian. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started, and I will turn the program over to Cindy Landis.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for joining. As Brittany mentioned, we're going to be talking about time-saving research tips, and to get things started, I am Cindy Landis, and I am the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at Forsyth Library. I'm the liaison to Communication Sciences and Disorders, Health and Human Performance, Agriculture, and Chemistry. And Elizabeth Downing Turner is the liaison to Biology and Geosciences and Physics. So we're here to talk about some of the different science resources that we have at Forsyth Library. And in this session in particular, we're going to cover how to search, where to search, and we're going to look all together in this one group at Academic Search Premier, which is a interdisciplinary database where that's one of the databases that we often refer people to. It's likely that you'll find something on your topic within that database because it's really vast and has quite a bit of resources within it. And then we're going to do a breakout session where we'll cover two different topics, so you can pick one of the two to attend, where Elizabeth is going to talk about primary and secondary research and advanced searching. And then I will be covering a second database called Science Direct, which has some several full text articles, ebooks, ebook chapters, all within the sciences, and a wide range of pretty premier journals and resources. And then we'll wrap things up by coming back together again and talking about where to go for help. And so if you could please enter in the Zoom chat box what your preference would be for the breakout session, since we are going to be splitting our group up into two smaller groups. If you have a preference of, or please list your preference of going to that advanced searching breakout room with Elizabeth and talking about that primary and secondary research, or selecting the Science Direct breakout room and coming with me to learn about Science Direct a little bit more. And that will help us transition into those breakout rooms a little more smoothly as we get to that point in our workshop. So, and then as a little bit of housekeeping, feel free to enter questions in the chat at any point in time as well. So, then throughout this time that we're together in this big room, we're going to utilize Poll Everywhere to get some feedback since we're in this online environment. So if you could go to pollev.com or visit the link that Brittany just added to the Zoom chat, either on your computer or your mobile device, then you'll be able to participate in some of the polls and some of the questions that we have to kind of work together to explore some of these library resources. And I'll launch the first poll. And so either by entering the information at the top of the screen or clicking the link in the chat, your first poll should be launched to start responding. And what we want to know is, what do you hope to learn from this workshop? We all have different research experiences and maybe came for one reason or another, or if any of the reasons aren't listed, other is always an option as well. But that just kind of helps us get an idea of what's interesting, what brought you here today. And again, we want to make sure any questions that you have specific to research get answered too. So that just gives us a good idea. A lot of tips for searching, which is good. That saves us time. Yeah, the more tips we have of how to develop that search and how to work with the search engines saves us in the long run, no matter what our project is or what we're working on. That's great. Okay. So that's very helpful. And so now let's launch into some of those tips for searching and talk about how to search. So I'm going to launch a second poll here. So if you keep that poll everywhere tab up, we'll ask several different ones throughout this session. So the second poll should be launched now for you to respond. And I want to know, where do you go when you need to search for scholarly sources? We all kind of have our own research strategies of where we go, what our preferences are, and what we do. But when we are starting a research project and we're told that we need to find scholarly sources, where do we go? What's our initial launch point? So I see a lot of Google Scholar, some specific library databases, some of us just go right to Google and see what we can find too. And that's great. So that helps us get an idea too of just kind of where we're coming from and what I can suggest with some of these search tips too. So yeah, we can definitely find scholarly sources on Google Scholar. And if you're on campus and within that IP address, you should see links on your Google Scholar results that say at FHSU Forsyth. And those will connect you to the resources at Forsyth Library to actually read the articles that we have and that we own. Otherwise, when you're searching Google Scholar without that connection to the library, you'll often run into a lot of different paywalls. So if you are off campus and you're not seeing that at FHSU Forsyth in those results, that's a great instance where we'd be happy to help you set that up if you ask a librarian on our library homepage, or reach out to us in some way here at the library, because we want to make sure that you're getting that access to the resources that you should get as a Fort Hays faculty, staff, student, that the library has available to you. All right. And then before we dive too far into how to search, I just want to orient us a little bit to the library homepage. So the library homepage is basically what we see up here is the portal to everything research is right here with that search everything tool, which is our library catalog. And this search everything tool will search everything that the library owns physically in the library, and it also searches multiple databases and points you out to which database to go to for whatever resource that you're interested in. There is an advanced search feature, which I do recommend, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. To continue orienting with the library homepage, I mentioned that Ask a Librarian on the side. Since a lot of us are used to using Google Scholar, if you have any questions about setting up that connecting Forsyth Library with Google Scholar, that Ask a Librarian button will pop out and ask you to chat. So that's a great way to just get connected and make sure that the Google Scholar is syncing with Forsyth Library resources, or if you have questions about citations or how to search, and when you're actually working on your project or whatever it is you're looking for, you can ask a librarian through that chat feature. We staff that on every single day of the week, including evenings and weekends. To continue looking at this library homepage here, back to this kind of center area of everything research, there are a couple of us that mentioned that we search directly in library databases to get started. So if that's our search strategy and that's where we go to start searching for scholarly sources, we would click that Research Databases button. And I will pull up the actual library homepage and show you what that looks like here. So if we click on the Research Databases button, it will take us to a list of our 221 databases that the library has. And each database is kind of its own search engine, its own collection of resources that specialize in a particular resource type or subject area. So you may not know exactly what database you want. So if you want to select this subject drop-down menu and select either your major, whatever course you're doing a research assignment in, that will help limit those databases down to some recommended resources for that discipline. And so that's a good strategy to get started if you want to search directly in some of these library databases. The last thing I want to point out on the homepage is the subject and course guides. So subject and course guides are basically miniature websites that are created by librarians, and these also recommend suggestions for where to search and kind of narrow down the broad scope of all the library resources we have for if you're doing research in chemistry, for example. Here are some database recommendations. Here are some citation information that would be really relevant to you in this field. So that is worth exploring as well as a search tip. And if we get back over to our PowerPoint. Before we dive in, I did just want to talk about kind of what to anticipate when we're searching. So since a lot of us are used to Google Scholar, we are used to searching kind of discovery search engines where those results let us know what resources exist, and it likely tells us something about where to find it. With Google Scholar, for example, they give you all the information that you need for a citation, and maybe they'll connect you to an article, but most times you'll end up at that paywall when using Google Scholar. So when it tells you where to find it, oftentimes that citation information of these search results is really a valuable tool, because then you can search other resources and the library catalog, for example, to see if you have access to that PDF article or that book chapter. Or you can request it via interlibrary loan, which I'll talk about a little bit more as well. So there are a couple different ways that search engines will tell us what it is that's available and how to find it. And discovery tools are similar to Google Scholar. The library catalog is an example of that. When we utilize the tools within the library catalog and search, that's not the place where the article actually lives, but it will tell us where to go to access it. Same with some of the library databases that we'll see. They may not have the full text right there immediately accessible to us, which can sometimes be frustrating, but it will connect you to either the citation information or somewhere else to get the full text so that you can actually get what you're looking for. But these discovery tools can have some powerful search tools to actually understand or learn about what is available and what you actually want to get and request. Whereas some other databases and search engines are more about access. Those are the ones that house the actual PDFs and full text. And so we'll see some of that here today as well. So as we kind of learn to anticipate some of that makes more sense as we're starting to work with the search engines and kind of work our way through our experience. Then, so when we're thinking how to search, we might be starting with a research topic, and oftentimes you start with a topic that's kind of broad, and you're kind of thinking of like, where do I get started? How do I get started? So maybe I'm doing a research paper or project on treating contaminated soil. If I take a few minutes at the very beginning of my search process and brainstorm and pick apart my topic a little bit more and ask myself those 5 W's of who, what, when, where, and why, or how, that can help me narrow down my topic a little bit more. So maybe I'd want to start asking myself, well, what is the soil contaminated with? How am I treating it? Am I treating it with bioremediation? Am I treating it with a certain type of remediation? Is the soil contaminated with oil? Is it contaminated with pesticides? And if I ask myself where, maybe I'd want to add some keywords and ideas to my topic to think further of, am I looking at treating soils here on the Kansas Plains and in more of like the agricultural environment and remediating those soils to the point where they would be able to grow food and crops again? Or am I looking at the mountains and some of the toxic chemicals that leak after mining? So there are a lot of different things. If I take some extra time at the very beginning to think of what other keywords I might want to consider, because oftentimes when we get these research help questions, we're starting with topics that are so broad that those search experiences aren't going to be very fruitful if we just start with a super broad topic. So if we take that little extra time at the beginning to really brainstorm some ideas, then that will help us as we move forward to actually working with the search engines. So any questions so far? Feel free to add them in the chat if you have a question. So then, now that we have some keywords and some ideas about our topic, we'll want to really sit down and think about how do these databases actually work. So we're used to Google, we're used to what is called phrase searching, where you can just type in like a whole sentence, a whole question, and Google's algorithms try to break that down, and sometimes they'll give you somewhat decent results. Sometimes they'll just be all over the board. They'll give you videos and images and commercial products and all these different things. And that's Google's way of being able to have some flexibility with their algorithm to bring back whatever they want with that phrase searching. But when we use library databases and library catalogs, we use what's called keyword searching, where it's up to us as the human element of the equation to break down our topic into keywords and break down that phrase that we normally ask Google into keywords and chunk them for the database and break them apart and connect them together. So when we break our keywords into a search string and we connect those with topics, this is one of the most powerful search tips, and it may seem easy off the start, but this is something that Google doesn't remind us to do. But the library databases are built around these concepts of keyword searching, where we connect our keywords with and, or we connect our keywords with or we tell the database more specifically by putting quotations around a phrase or multiple words that develop a concept. So if we're looking at and connecting our keywords together, that's telling the database, I only want to see the articles that have both of these keywords represented. So your results will be a lot more narrow and therefore more relevant. If we use or to connect our keywords together, that's your way of being the human in the equation of saying, I understand that fungal remediation and mycoremediation are the same things, and that people may be talking about them in two different ways, depending on who's writing about it or who's researching it. And so I want to accept either of those words together. So you are looking at either of those circles and telling the database, it's okay that I see either of those words represented in my results. If we put quotations around it, it's telling the database, I want to see those words in that order very specifically. And quotations is a great search tip to use with Google too. It's a great way when we're searching like a title of an article or a title of a journal, just to make sure that those words are in that order as they appear. So those are a few tips that I recommend taking away today, is kind of taking that extra time to brainstorm and to connect your ideas together, and look for the advanced search, because an advanced search feature of any database or any search engine is going to give you a better idea of how that search engine wants to communicate with you and wants you to type in more information and wants to know what you're actually looking for. So some examples of advanced search features is that you can add more keywords, add new lines, add more keywords all together. And oftentimes they'll have a drop down of those connector words that we just saw, of and, or, and not. So they'll kind of prompt you to be like, oh yeah, that library workshop, we learned about some search strategies, and I can connect my ideas and develop it further to get better results. So when we're looking for that advanced search feature, that's gonna help bring us further in our results and get us more narrow results from the beginning versus having hundreds of thousands of results and not really sure what one's the best. Do I pick? What do I do from there? But a lot of the library databases specifically will have filters along the side to help narrow those searches even more, which we'll see here with Academic Search Premier. So when we think of where to search, since we're focusing on a library database, we'll click on that Research Databases button on the library homepage. And since I know we're going to be looking at Academic Search Premier, I'm just going to scroll down to the list here in the alphabetical order. If I wasn't sure, again, I could use those subject drop-down arrows too to find a database that may be appropriate for my area. So once I'm in Academic Search Premier, this will give me its own kind of search engine set that I may look familiar or may look unfamiliar if you're new to scholarly searching. So once we're in the database, we'll see what we were just seeing here. It defaults to the advanced search, which is great because it prompts you to want to add more. And a beautiful thing about Academic Search Premier is that it starts typing back to you. So a lot of searching and the success with searching is being able to understand the database and communicate with the database. So if I'm curious about fungus and its treatment with soils that are contaminated with oil, I might start typing fungus and you'll notice that the database was like, or fungi or fungal. I don't know how it's going to be represented or in what tense it's going to be written in, but I could accept that suggestion from the database. That will help make my search stronger. And since I'm looking at soils contaminated with oil, I might add a few keywords relating to that. And since I'm looking at bioremediation, the more natural way of treating the soils, I can start with several keywords here. And that is a pretty strong search string because I'm telling the database more about my topic than just I want to treat soils that are somehow contaminated with something. And with the advanced search tool, I can get very advanced, but I'm not going to select too many options here. But if I wanted to, I could add in publication date limitations. I could say, maybe I'm going to say, I know I need a peer-reviewed article for this particular assignment. If I have more specifics, I can continue working my way through my advanced search. But I know there are going to be filters at this next step, so I'm not going to check too many boxes here. So I'm going to search and just kind of see what I get here. And when we get to our results list, it helps to just take a couple minutes and really pay attention to what the database is bringing back to you, because that's a way of just saying, are we on the same page here? If some of these titles and some of these subject headings, I recommend you pay attention to subject headings in whatever database you're looking in. That will help give you an idea of, are you on the right track? Are you guys on the same page of you and the database? And so what we see here are bioremediation and fungi, which is good, petroleum and soils. So I'm feeling pretty good about so far what I'm seeing. And this may not be my end-all be-all search. Searching is an exploration. So we might have to try some different keywords, try some different things, maybe try a different database if we're not seeing what we're looking for, or that really fits our topic or that really fits our assignment requirements. So from these search results, we can apply some filters here along the side. We had already selected that peer-reviewed filter from our advanced search. But again, I'd have the option to narrow publication date. So maybe I know EPA regulations have changed, bioremediation has picked up. So maybe I would modify my year. So I can apply some additional filters on top of the keywords. And that's a beauty of the library databases, is because we don't see a lot of options with Google Scholar to really have some of these advanced search features and filters when we actually get to our search results. I had mentioned earlier about kind of access and discovery, and we see a little bit of both here in Academic Search Premier. So when we access things, and the full text is available right here in the database. So let's say I'm interested in this first one here. If I click on it and I look for that PDF full text, that will take me to the article itself. So that is going to get me what I need, get me my article to read, add to my reading list, and keep for my citation tracking and records. You can download it here, and within EBSCO there are tools along the side where you can email it to yourself, save it to Google Drive. There's even a citation generation tool. I will say of these tools, the permalink is also something to pay attention to, because if you ever just copy and paste links over, if I'm going to look at these later, look for the permalink instead of copy and pasting from up here. I will mention with the citation tools, don't trust them 100%. They're not 100% accurate, but they can give you a start. So the citation generation tool within these databases can save you some time for sure, but don't just copy and paste over. And the last thing I wanted to point out with these databases is that sometimes it will take you to a page where it just says find it at Forsyth. It doesn't give us that full text. So if we click the find it at Forsyth, that will launch us off into the library catalog to say, so the database is telling us this article exists, here's who wrote it, here's what it's about. It even gives us an abstract and all this information of what to help us decide whether or not we want to read it. If we click the find it at Forsyth, it will launch us over into the library catalog and actually tell us where that article lives if the library has access to it. And then that will launch me into the access database to actually get the full text article of it. Occasionally, when you click that find it at Forsyth, it will take you to a page here, then it says no full text available. And that's an instance where you would want to request that article via interlibrary loan. And so interlibrary loan, if you click the not available, request your interlibrary loan button, that will shortcut you over, but it's also a service on the library homepage. So if you were searching in Google Scholar and didn't have access to the full text and you wanted to request that specific article, you could go directly to the library's homepage, click on interlibrary loan. And if this is your first time, you'll want to create an account. But once you have an account, you want to log in and then request that article through the form there. Basically, copy and paste over the information of the title, the author, when it was published, etc. And then we'll work with you to get that article to you as quickly as we can. And it's a service that is no cost to you. And so with interlibrary loan, we see several instances where it would be where you can't access that full text, or you see that find it at Forsyth, but it doesn't take you to where you can actually get the article. Or if you're searching, whatever search engine you're using, takes you to a page that says you need to pay $50 for an article. Anything that requires payment, feel free to fill out that information on interlibrary loan and we will get that for you. That's a privilege that you have as a Fort Hays student, faculty, and staff. Or if you're an online student and there's a physical item or a book in the library catalog and you live too far away, you can request that to be mailed to you too through our interlibrary loan program. So those are a few search tips and a little brief overview of Academic Search Premier and kind of giving you some examples of how we employed some of those search tips. But now we'll go into some breakout sessions.
Yes, thank you, Cindy, for that brief overview of where to search and how to search. In just a moment, you all will receive an invitation to join a breakout room based on the preferences that you indicate in the chat. You will be in the breakout rooms for about 10 minutes with one of our expert librarians. And at the conclusion of that, you'll be invited back to the main session for a short wrap up and also for the prize drawing at the end of the session. Once the breakout rooms have been launched, you will not be able to return to the main session. You will want to stay in that session for the duration of the 10 minutes. So with that being said, you should now have received your invitation, and I invite you to join the breakout room that you indicated.
My name is Elizabeth, and I am the liaison to biology and geosciences and physics. And we're going to be talking about searching for primary versus secondary sources. Let's start. I'm going to admit I'm not very good at driving here. So I put a link to the chat down in, or a link to this poll down in the chat. And if you could, click on that link and let me know whether or not you are familiar with the difference between primary and secondary sources. That'll give me a little bit of an idea about how in-depth I need to go into certain things. So oftentimes a professor will ask you they will ask you to go find a primary source or a secondary source, and it's important to know the difference. So we'll go ahead and we'll just move forward since we don't have a lot of time. I've got this timer clicking at me. So we'll start with a few definitions, and then we're going to go into some search tips, and then we'll go out into the wild and try this out. So primary versus secondary sources. Primary sources are original research that collects and analyzes new data. These are things like experiments, case studies, surveys, anything that collects new data. It's important to think about the types of activities that create new data because these will come in handy later on when you're searching for these sources. Now, secondary research analyzes the work of others. These are things like literature reviews, meta-analyses, ethnographies, and reports. So what happens when students or faculty are out there, and faculty know this for the most part, but definitely for students, that when they go out searching for a primary source, what they do is they plug in their search term and then they add primary source or secondary source to the end of it, and they don't get any good results. So a better way to search is to use the Boolean operator and, so that's that connecting word, those connecting words that Cindy told us about. And so creating a search phrase that's something like genetics and study or hydrology and experiment. Those are going to return results that are more likely to be primary sources. You're still going to have to go read the source and look at some different things to determine for certain what you have. But if you're looking for a secondary source, something like and literature review should help you with that. So now that we've got those definitions out of the way, we're going to go out into the wild and we're going to try this. So let me get out of this. And so this right here is our library catalog. And so what we're going to do is we're going to type up here in the search box, we're going to look for human genetics.
Yeah,
now,
Elizabeth, I don't think I can see that.
You don't think you can see that? Let me make sure that we can, that I can fix that. Thank you for telling me. How about now? Okay, thank you. I'm really bad at driving these, but thank you for telling me. So we search for human genetics and we get almost 6 million results, which is a lot. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to narrow it down using the filters on the side. We know we went peer reviewed, full text online, and articles. And I'm going to click down here, sent, and then we're going to tell it to remember all filters so that we don't have to do that again. So now that cuts it down by about half. So we're going to go ahead and add that and experiment. And so what we get here is this first article. This looks promising. It talks about the molecular function. It doesn't have things in there like review or, you know, it's not a reference work. We can tell that from the title. So we'll click in here and we'll see what we have. Let's go take a look. So this is where those skills for reading scholarly articles is going to really come in handy. So we're going to take a look here at the abstract, and it looks promising. We're talking about, you know, the effects of gene expression on human tissue. So to really make sure, we're going to scroll down and we're going to look here at the study design. Now this paragraph here goes into detail about how they collected the new data. So we talk about collecting cells from donor blood and skin samples and some postmortem samples. So we know that they're collecting new data. We've done it. We've got a primary research article here. So let's go back, and we're going to give this a shot with a secondary resource. So this secondary resource. So this time we're going to add literature review. Let's see what we get. And it kept our filters over here so that you don't have to go back, and it just saves time. Now, this first one says case report with literature review. We know that things like case studies are primary research, so this probably won't work for us. But if we scroll a little farther, we get to this one that says a literature review. So that's, you know, literature reviews are secondary sources. So we'll pull it up, and you always want to make certain that what you have is what you want. And so when we get in here, we'll scroll down, we're looking for that methods or studies design. Here it is, and they identified published literature. So this right here is a secondary source.
Dive into Science Direct. And feel free to use the chat feature of our breakout room too, if you don't want to turn on your mic or anything like that. But so since Science Direct is a research database, since we're looking specifically with databases that are relevant to the Werth College of Science, Technology, and Mathematics, I would want to click on the Research Databases button of the library homepage. And Science Direct is listed under several of the different majors that we have within the Werth College of Science, Technology, and Mathematics. But it's also listed just under general science. And so once I click on Science Direct, that will launch me into the database. And just as I mentioned in our bigger session, always look for that advanced search because initially this, the homepage of Science Direct, it may look a little odd if it's really almost asking for like citation information, which can kind of throw us off as searchers of like, okay, yeah, it wants keywords, but it's asking for specific volume and issue numbers and everything like that. So the advanced search is just a little more friendly, that focuses, gives you a little more space, makes you feel a little more like we can understand what the search engine is really looking for. And they do provide some search tips over here. They have these hover search tips or the launch off search tips if we want to really dive into how this database is searching. I do recommend that you register an account with Science Direct if you plan on using it on a regular basis, because then that allows you to save your search history, and it will feed you recommendations based on your search history and your saved searches. And it can even email you when new articles on your search get published and added to this database as well. So I recommend that you sign in or create an account because of those additional features, because those alerts and that tracking history can be helpful, especially if we're working on any type of long-term project. And so just like we were utilizing our kind of advanced search string that we were talking about in our main session, this database doesn't give us all those dropdowns or all those keyword blanks to really prompt us to say, you should be searching multiple things. Let's think about these advanced phrases. So we'll need to do that part on our own. So if we think about our similar topic of soil and fungi and bioremediation and oil, for example, I can type in to just find articles with these terms. If I know a particular journal or book title I'm looking for, I can type that in too, and it actually starts talking back to you of what journals this article or this database houses. So I could be pretty specific if I wanted to, of what does the Journal of Biochemical Engineering have on bioremediation and fungus. Maybe I'd want to limit my keywords a little bit more if I was really specific of any of those journal titles. But similar to the other databases that we saw, we can limit by the publication date. But one of the nice features about Science Direct is that you can get very, very specific of what type of article that you're looking for, which this kind of overlaps a little bit of what Elizabeth was going to talk about. But if we know we want original research, or if we know we want a review article, which is more of kind of an overview or a meta-analysis of a particular topic, then those, I can select those to only include those in my results. Or maybe I know I want a book chapter, which would give me kind of a broader overview of just the use of fungus in bioremediation. So if I know specifically what it is I'm looking for, or kind of a type of source, this database has some of these advanced features that you don't see as often, or that drilled down into the type of article. And then within Science Direct as well, it will give us our results and give us some filters similar to what we were seeing with our Academic Search Premier. So if I didn't know from the very beginning what type of articles I was looking for, I start finding a lot of encyclopedia entries and I'm like, no, that's not quite it. I need original research. I can modify and add some things from here. You'll notice in the filters, there's 2021. What year are we in? We're only in 2020. So especially in the sciences and some of the science publications, we're having advanced publication dates, and so we get a sneak peek basically of what this long publishing process in the world of scholarly literature is. They know what's getting published in 2021, and sometimes we even have access to see what it is, what's going to be coming out. Whether or not we have the full text of that just varies case by case, but that is something I did want to point out just with this database in particular and our field in general. Some of those advanced publication access. Certain journals are better about allowing that than others, but yeah, so that's a filter to kind of look at or pay attention to too, if you really want to stay on top of what's new in that field. So from here, from our search results, we see a lot of download PDFs. So this is more of an access database because it houses a ton of journals and a ton of ebooks and ebook chapters. So if I were to be interested in one of my results here, I'm actually going to go with number 3. That looks interesting. If I click on the title itself, it will take me to the article detail page where I can download that article and get more information about it too. So Science Direct is really nice because they give you these highlights and then they give you the full abstract so that you can decide whether or not you want to read or whether or not that's a fit for your topic. They also recommend articles here along the side. And so that might also give you an idea, talking back and forth with the database, of is this kind of, are these suggestions fitting, or maybe this article isn't as good of a fit as you thought because it's leading all the way to different chemistry journals, and or maybe that's perfect fit, like that's really my area of focus, that's what I was hoping for. So that can help give you some feedback as well from the database of, are there recommendations kind of aligning with what you were hoping? They also will kind of quick track to different parts of the research article, which as you're reading more and more scholarly literature, you may, one of the tips of doing so is to not read the entire thing beginning to end. It's to kind of read particular sections first and see, okay, is this matching up? And then maybe, so you'd read the intro and maybe the conclusion, maybe look at the results, and kind of skip around a little bit. We have a library tutorial that goes into more detail of suggested order of reading scholarly articles, so that you're not just sitting down and reading a full thing. So this is nice to be able to kind of skim and scan your article as well. Then we have some sharing and export features, and Science Direct is really good about making the DOI very obvious within these results. So A DOI is a digital object identifier, and that's the best thing ever compared to, so I mentioned we want a permalink versus just copy and pasting the link from the top. So if we look for a permalink, that would be a good way to get back to this article. But the DOI is a permanent digital object identifier. So if we have a DOI to this article 20 years down the road, we should be able to get back to that article with that DOI, because it is like a permanent address for where this article will live, no matter what happens to these websites, no matter what servers change or anything like that. And in our citation styles, if we're doing APA, ACS with chemistry, we'll all ask for DOIs listed as well, if they're electronic resources. So that's something to pay attention to, and something that Science Direct makes really pretty clear. So, and we'll notice if we get back to our results list, we typed in very similar keywords into this database, and our keywords are bringing back a lot more science-directed results of, they go a little bit deeper into the science vocabulary, and we'll dive deeper into some of those more prestigious journals too. So that's why I did want to showcase this one.
Okay, welcome back to the main session. I hope that you were able to get a lot of good research tips. And now to wrap up our session, I would like to give you some additional information on where to go for help. Today, you were able to speak with two expert librarians, Elizabeth Downing-Turner and Cindy Landis, but there are two other library liaisons within the College of Science, Technology, and Mathematics. Mary Rudman is the liaison to computer science and mathematics, and Amber Watts is the liaison to applied technology. You are always invited to reach out directly to your library liaison. However, you can ask a librarian for questions at any stage of the research process in these various ways: by phone, text, email, by appointment, or by live chat on the Forsyth Library homepage. I also would invite you to take out your mobile device and take a photo of the QR code on the screen. This will prompt you to install the Forsyth Library Research Help app to your phone. On that app, you will have access to the Ask a Librarian services, to tutorials to help you learn how to navigate Forsyth Library resources, as well as to research guides specific to your subject area. With that, we invite you to visit the Forsyth Library website for access to research databases and other services, as well as to follow us at FHSU Library for more updates on programs, events, and services. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and have a great day.